Hello and welcome back to the Import Export Hub channel, everyone. Bogdan here, your host for the next 10 minutes or so. Thanks for joining me, by the way. I hope that everybody is doing great, and without asking you to hit those small vanity buttons, allow me to start covering Dominican Republic export dynamics. Basically, covering the top 20 headings that had the largest absolute changes in 24-24, both positive and negative. While towards the end of the video, I'll also show you Dominican Republic top 20 headings that had the smallest variability for the 2020-2024 timeframe, with the coefficient of variation as a proxy in my attempt at uncovering potential comparative advantages, but more on this in a couple of minutes. So first things first, guys, in terms of positive performers, we see that heading 7108, so gold basically, had the largest absolute positive change in 2024, some $350 million yearly change, which brought the overall exports for this heading to some $1.5 billion. On the second spot, we see instruments and appliances used in medical, surgical, dental, or veterinary sciences. So I'm talking about heading 9018 with a positive change of some $334 million and some $1.8 billion in overall exports again for 2024. And what is interesting here, if you ask me, is the compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, which currently reads some 13%, which I think it's pretty impressive, if you ask me. While on the third place, ending the podium, we see cocoa beans heading 1801 with an absolute positive change for 2024 around $240 million. And then the list goes on with waste and scrap of precious metal, for example, who saw some $47 million change. Copper ores and concentrates is next, so heading 2603 with some $36 million positive change. What else do we see? Coffee, for example, is also present in this top 20 list with some $21 million change. While towards the end of this list, we see jerseys, cardigans, or pullovers with a positive change of $16.5 million. Eggs in shell is on the 19th spot with some $18 million in overall exports, while cocoa butter, so heading 1804, ends this top 20 list with a positive change of $16.3 million and an overall export value around $21 million. These two with an impressive compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years. And guys, looking at this data, what insights can we draw? Well, if we're looking at the summary chart here, we see a lot of unique chapters, so quite diversified, even though in terms of exported values, not all the headings have impressive figures. But given the size, it's understandable. Anyways, even with this inconvenient, let's say, we see some 4 clusters here emerging, and I'm talking about chapters 90, 18, 24, and 39. So instruments used in medical sciences, cocoa sector, cigars and plastics, all 8 headings with impressive compound annual growth rates for the last 5 years, except maybe for heading 9019, so mechanotherapy appliances, who had a 12.6% contraction. And my educated guess is telling me that these sectors will continue to drive Dominican Republic exports in the medium term as well, along with a new entrant which is related to parts of aircraft or spacecraft, so heading 8807 to be precise, which I think is related to some refurbishing and or maintenance activities, and not necessarily a pure manufacturing facility, but definitely with positive spillovers into the Dominican Republic economy. Otherwise, in terms of compound annual growth rates for the last 5 years, As we can see together here, except for two headings who have negative changes, the rest are all positive with some impressive double-digit figures. So yeah, positive prospects here, especially considering the current geopolitical tensions. Moving now, guys, to the largest absolute negative changes. On the first spot, we see here ferroalloys, so heading 7202, who had a contraction of some $319 million. Pharmaceutical preparations follows with a contraction of some $54 million, but we have some $475 million in overall exports for 2024. While t-shirts, so heading 6109 ends the podium, let's say, with a contraction of some $45 million, but still impressive when it comes to the overall export value, as we see some $457 million worth of exports for 2024 from this particular heading. What else do we see? Well, we see bananas, for example, so heading 0803 with a negative change of almost $14 million. Brooms and brushes is also present with a contraction of almost $10 million, while towards the end of this list we see dates, figs, pineapples, avocados, and the like, with an yearly contraction of some $8 million. Beauty or makeup preparations sits on the 19th spot, while woven fabrics of cotton, so heading 5209 ends this top 20 list with a contraction of some $8 million and an overall export value for 2024 of some $17 million. And again, guys, following the example from the previous sheet, I've prepared a summary chart to see together how these 20 headings behave, let's say, and we see quite a lot of unique chapters here too, with two chapters that were hit a little bit more, so chapter 85 and chapter 52. As they have in this top 20 list 3 headings each. Then we see chapter 30 and 8, each with 2 headings, with the former pretty important in terms of overall export value at least, and the same goes true for chapter 61, mostly comprised of t-shirts. But if we corroborate with compound annual growth rates for the last 5 years, I think it is safe to say that they are not in a dangerous situation, even though on an yearly basis they had important contractions. What would worry me would be the ferroalloy and the carbon electrodes headings, which could be related to some potential disinvestment. So yeah, I would focus on these particular headings in premise, but others are under pressure also, especially bananas and the food preparations headings, both with impressive overall export figures, which could erode further if some structural changes are not made. Anyways, guys, with this shame list, let's say, covered as well, I will now move to the top 20 headings that had the smallest variability for the 2020-2024 time frame, with the coefficient of variation, as I said at the beginning, as a proxy in my attempt in identifying Dominican Republic competitive advantage when it comes to exports. And as we can see together here, men's or boys suits, so heading 6203 has the smallest coefficient of variation, with some $12.8 million worth of exports in 2024. Tomatoes, fresh or chilled, sits on the second spot with a coefficient of variation of 0.058 and some $24 million worth of exports, while other vegetables, again fresh or chilled, ends the podium with a coefficient of variation of 0.59 and some $39 million worth of exports. What else do we see? We see dates, figs, pineapples, avocados, and the like, with a coefficient of variation of 0.062 and some $100 million worth of exports. Towards the middle of this list, we see electrical apparatus for switching or protecting electrical circuits, so heading 8563, with a coefficient of variation of 0.063 and an impressive $910 million when it comes to the overall export value for 2024. The largest amount by far in this top 20 list. Made up articles of textile materials is also present here with an overall export figure around $63 million and a coefficient of variation of 0.078. While towards the end of this list we see molasses, for example, with a coefficient of variation of 0.092, which is followed on the 19th spot and 20th spot by two headings from the same chapter. So preparations for the use on the hair, and the other one are preparations for oral or dental hygiene. The former has a coefficient of variation of 0.093, while the latter has a coefficient of variation of 0.095. Now, guys, in terms of insights, this method reveals some sectors where the Dominican Republic has a competitive advantage. Well, if I look at the chart here, we see that there are two clusters, one with three headings and the other with two headings. So mostly we're speaking about the vegetable sector, electronic machinery and equipment. Then we have fruits, mostly bananas and avocados. Chapter 63 stands for other textiles, while chapter 33 comprises cosmetic or toilet preparations. So we could say that in terms of competitive advantage, these sectors stand out, especially the electronic machinery and components one, but from what I saw, there could be other sectors that could emerge. And here I've took three sectors from the top 20 positive list that I think will drive up Dominican Republic exports in the medium term at least. And I'm talking here about chapter 90, medical and surgical appliances, chapter 18, cocoa beans, and chapter 39, so articles for packaging goods or plastics. Now, don't imagine that for chapters like 90 or 85, the Dominican Republic has a lot of added value, because this is not the case, guys. We're talking about an export platform, if you want, towards the United States, where some light manufacturing is done and then shipped to the United States, as they benefit from, I don't know, lower wages, relatively good container shipping connectivity, and of course the free trade agreement with the United States. And speaking of the United States, this is a curse and a blessing at the same time for the Dominican Republic, if you ask me. A curse because things can get ugly quickly when some 60% of all the exports are directed towards the United States. And a blessing because, well, you have a free trade agreement in place, you're close to the United States, and of course the factors of production are competitive. Anyways, time will tell how things will unfold. I am pretty optimistic about its relation with the United States, but who knows what the Oval Office thinks about this. So guys, with this sheet covered as well, I think that my job here for today is done. Thank you for watching. I hope you've liked it. Don't forget to hit those small vanity buttons below this video. And as always, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.